I'm Jason Harris, founder of Jason's Connection. Today we're interviewing Dr. Ryan Niemiec, Education Director at VIA Institute on Character. What got you interested in psychology?
Well, thanks for interviewing me, Jason.
Yeah.
It's a great pleasure to be here. Um, yeah, in psychology, my first interest actually started back in high school. It was actually in 12th grade. I took a class in psychology and was just really intrigued by the study of the human mind and looking closer at thinking and feeling and behaving in different patterns like that. And that really just, it never then left me, that interest. It just always stuck with me kind of at my core. And then everything kind of took off from there.
And you work in positive psychology. What is that?
Yeah, so I work at the VIA Institute on Character, as you mentioned, and so the VIA Institute is a nonprofit organization here in Cincinnati, Ohio, that has a mission to advance the science of character strengths and the practice of character strengths. And character strengths is this area within positive psychology, and positive psychology is viewed as the science of well-being. So it's kind of like trying to apply research to what's best in us. So trying to use research to look at and study, what helps to make a happy person, what helps to boost a positive relationship, what helps us to become more healthy, to create positive organizations, and so on. So positive psychology is kind of this kind of bigger field, and then our work is about what we think of as one of the most important areas of positive psychology, the character strengths.
And before we get into the character strengths, like what has positive psychology found out on some of the topics that you brought up?
Yeah. Well, it's found out a lot. There's been, hundreds, if not thousands, of studies just in the last 10 years since this. Actually, in the last 15 years, since this movement was kind of ushered in back in the late 1990s, and there's studies around looking at what helps people to become happier. So, some of the findings are around relationships, and that creating positive and good relationships is one of the strongest and best ways to help people to become happier. We could talk about character strengths later as being another part. So there's been kind of lots of different pocket areas. There's areas of the study of resilience and helping people to become more resilient. There's areas in positive psychology called mindfulness, which is about being more attentive to the present moment. And so each of these areas then has different research findings as well.
So can you explain the character strengths then and how that works with VIA?
Sure, yeah. So the character strengths are, if we start with sort of a definition, character strengths are capacities within all human beings. They're capacities or, positive traits that we can use to kind of gain better fulfillment within ourselves or to bring benefit to other people. So it's strengths like curiosity, creativity, love, gratitude, teamwork, kindness, and so on. And so people begin to learn more about their own character strengths or the character strengths of others, and then bring more attention to those and try to build them up or use them more. And so that's really what we're particularly interested in is studying these character strengths and helping to really kind of spread that message really to the world, to all people, to be able to tap into more.
So what are your character strengths and how do you sort of imply that to the things that you do?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the areas that we look at most closely is what we call signature strengths.
Yeah.
And so those are the strengths that are most high in a person or most core to who we are. And my signature strengths are hope and love, appreciation of beauty and excellence, perspective, fairness, and honesty. And so as I think about my own highest strengths, I begin to see that I really use them in almost everything that I'm doing. And they're kind of a reflection of the work that I do and so on. So for example, in my work, I try to bring forth kind of these ideas and messages on strengths. And so that's very much about my strength of hope, that I have that strength of hope for a better society, for betterment in my relationship, or betterment to help other people. So my hope character strength or hope signature strength is right there, kind of fueling all of that. Another one of my signature strengths being love. I really come, in a general way. I try to kind of come at connections with people in a way that's warm and genuine. But I can apply that love very specifically with my kids too. So when my kids come back from their daycare or school, as we call it, I might hug them and kiss them. So expressing love that way, and then trying to give them undivided attention. So setting aside my iPhone and setting aside the electronics and just spending 100% time and attention just right there with them in the moment, and whether it's playing with a toy or doing something. And so then that's kind of an expression of my love strength, to be there right there with them. The honesty is a strength of mine. It's difficult for me to lie, and I value telling the truth, and I appreciate that. So in my interactions, I try to come at things always from that kind of genuine, authentic approach. So those are some of the ways that some of my signature strengths come across in family and work, and
So is VIA really into research, or is it education, or do you work with people? How can people interact with VIA?
Yeah, well, VIA is really all of those things.
Yeah.
So it's my job as the education director, so it's to try to educate really the world, anybody, about character strengths. And VIA itself, does a little bit of all of those things, so it does quite a bit of research and quite a bit of helping other people to do research, and championing that research for people. It does a little bit of consultation, like kind of locally here in Cincinnati, where we connect with different agencies and trying to help them to tap into character strengths or to use character strengths into their programs and so on. And then myself and another colleague at VIA do a little bit of practice, so a little bit of coaching that anybody could do kind of online, where we work one-on-one with people's character strengths. So there's a little bit of each of those, but really, everything comes down to, are we doing something that's going to advance the science and the research of character strengths and helping to bring that to the world, and are we doing something with helping other people to practice it better? And by that, very broadly, the practice is not just kind of counselors working with clients, but it's also teachers working with students and managers working with employees. And so all of those people, that anybody that helps anybody else or supervises somebody else, could be using these character strengths. And so we want to try to be helpful in any of those ways. But the other part of your question was, how can people get involved? The simplest way, and probably the most common way, is for people to take the VIA survey of strengths. And this is actually a free tool online. It came out in like 2003, 2004. It's now been taken by over 3 million people. It's reached every country around the world. And what people do is they go to the website. It's just www.viacharacter.org, and then they take the VIA survey. And basically, it's basically answering very simple questions about yourself. So, are you interested in curious about new things, and do you like to create new ideas and new products and things like that? So questions like that. And then what happens is, after people complete the test, it takes about 15 minutes to do. They get a rank order of their character strengths. So we found that there are 24 character strengths that are universal in all human beings. So in people in the most remote areas on the planet have these strengths and value these strengths, and then people in Western cultures, Eastern cultures have these strengths. And so what you get, it's really unique. I mean, never has there been something like this in the world before. People then get these results, a rank order from 1 to 24 of their highest strengths, middle strengths, and their lower strengths. And so and I've taken that survey now maybe 4 or 5 times. I think about once a year, to kind of look at my strength profile and if there's little changes. So that's how I know that my signature strengths, when you asked me earlier, that's how I know they're love and curiosity and appreciation of beauty and excellence and fairness and honesty and perspective and so on. So that would be the first way, and that's an easy way. People can obviously do it on their own time. And then they can kind of go from there. Are they going to try to apply these strengths more in their life? Or are they going to try to help empower their employees to use their strengths and employees to align their strengths with what they're doing at work. If you're a teacher taking it, are you going to help bring this to your school like a lot of other teachers are doing around the world? If you're a coach or a therapist or somebody, are you going to apply that with your clients? So the applications kind of are endless. The possibilities are endless of what people could then do after they take that via survey.
So I think it's interesting too, because you didn't use the word weakness. You used maybe not the most strong strengths. How does that impact people? Is there a reason that you don't use the word weakness?
Yeah, well, yeah. So with this profile from 1 to 24, we do see them all as strengths because they're all capacities that we all have. But naturally, the human inclination is to look to the bottom 5. You know, everyone does this when they get the results. Probably all 3 million people have done that, and they look to the bottom 5, and then they might say like to themselves, "Oh, look at my weaknesses. Look what I'm not good at," or something. And really, it's not a correct way to think about it because the test doesn't actually measure weaknesses. There are plenty of tests that measure weakness or psychopathology and so on, but this actually is just a measure of strengths and particularly your character strengths, who you are. So they are like lesser strengths or lower strengths. There may be strengths that aren't as developed that if you brought more attention to, you could. The least common strengths around the world, almost always, at least across countries, is self-regulation, prudence, humility, zest usually comes up pretty low, and actually spirituality. Those are probably the 5 least common of the 24. But there are people that have those as number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 too. But just on average, those tend to be the lowest ones. So a lot of people will find those in their bottom 5, and then the idea is, well, how can they work with those? Because they still have them. Even the person that's 24th in self-regulation, they got up in the morning and they brushed their teeth and they got dressed and they ate breakfast. All those tests take self-regulation. They just might not be really great at self-regulating around their eating habits or their exercise habits and some of those challenges, and maybe that's why they were scored a little bit lower. So they're all developable. Those are potential to be increased, those 24 strengths.
So you talk about culture and stuff, and you actually co-authored a book on positive psychology in movies. How is that different than regular psychology in music and movies, and how would you sort of like explain that?
Yeah. So that book, Positive Psychology in the Movies, what we did for that is we used this via classification of the 24 character strengths as a lens for looking at movies. So most people will go to the movies, and they go to the movies for entertainment, which is probably the most common reason to go, and that's wonderful. I do that too, and it's kind of an escape. It's a way to maybe relax, escape from the stress of the day, and you find yourself in the characters, or you kind of get lost in the action movie or the romance or the drama and so on. And that is great, but I think that simultaneously movies can be a great vehicle for learning and for teaching. And so why not teach people about their very best qualities? And all these interactions and these dramas and these action films, any of these movies, the better ones, certainly will have some kind of depth to the characters. And you can see the 24 character strengths kind of emerging from different characters. So like, you take a movie like A Beautiful Mind, with Russell Crowe, and it's a movie about a true story about a genius mathematician who won the Nobel Prize, but he also happens to suffer from schizophrenia. But so you can watch that and understand that story and enjoy it and be entertained by it. But then you can also add another layer of the positive psychology piece and looking at that with like kind of glasses or a lens of character strengths. Say, well, what are the highest character strengths of the Russell Crowe character? And how did he use those to overcome some of his challenges? So we begin to see the enormous creativity that he had with his original idea and how he brought it forth. We begin to see his critical thinking or judgment strength to be able to look at really tiny details of things. And then you see his wife, who is so kind of compassionate and caring to him throughout all of the suffering and struggles. So you begin to see her character strengths are kind of forgiveness and love and that warmth and that kindness. And so then suddenly the characters are kind of popping out even more, and we're seeing the depth to them. And so that's why we wrote that book. We wrote about over 1,500 movies
Mm-hmm.
and map them across these 24 character strengths,
Mm-hmm.
and then use those movies as a teaching tool,
Mm-hmm.
so where people could learn more about those particular character strengths that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any hope to do that with television or books? And the reason I ask that is because it seems like one of the things is developing strengths over time, and how you sort of. It seems like television and books have more of a capacity for time and length, and sometimes you can really get to know a character and see how they sort of grow through those different mediums more than sometimes you can in a movie.
Well, it's a very insightful comment
Yeah.
that you're making, because it's a beautiful exercise to do.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I don't have plans to do that. So, like,
Yeah.
I don't have plans to do positive psychology in TV or
Yeah.
in books. I recently have talked with people that are interested in that in the TV aspect, or like a lot of these
Yeah.
serial dramas that's becoming a real big trend lately, and I'm starting to fall into my own little addictions into Walking
Yeah.
Dead, or this new thing called Zoo, and some of these other TV series. But so it is fascinating, exactly what you
Yeah.
say. Some of these series that last for many years, and then you can watch the development of those character strengths.
Yeah.
So for sure, it's a useful exercise for the viewers, for maybe teachers working with students, therapists working with clients, anybody really, or just for one's own self-development to kind of
Yeah.
watch the trajectory of those
Yeah.
strengths over time in those characters. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
There's kind of a lot to track there, so that
Yeah.
would be a lot for someone to do. But
Yeah,
and
but
same thing with a book, like you
Yeah.
said, with novels, there's great depth that happens
Yeah.
there.
I mean, it seems like with movies you tend to focus more on the main character strengths. With some of these other mediums, you can focus on the main, but you can also look at the growing of the other character strengths.
That's right, exactly
Yeah.
right. Yeah, and is a little bit of that being done in some schools. So
Yeah.
some schools, right here in Cincinnati, through the Mayerson Academy's work, they're doing some work on bringing character strengths to different schools, and then also other schools around the world, actually, like in Australia and so on, that are bringing character strengths to teachers and to kids, are also bringing this character strengths work to the curriculum. So they're kind of doing bits and pieces of what you're saying, where the teacher then would be looking at, say, the novel Moby Dick,
Yeah.
or The Awakening, or classics like the Great Gatsby, or one of my favorites, The Catcher in the Rye, or many others, and then be looking at having the students do exercises, not just write an essay on Catcher in the Rye, but what are the character strengths of Holden Caulfield, and how he interacts with lesser characters like Phoebe, his sister, and maybe are there character strengths that he overused, he uses too much, that kind of get him in trouble? Are there strengths he underuses that get him in trouble? What are Phoebe's unique strengths? So it's a beautiful strength, and so teachers are starting to weave that into the curriculum for that kind of work. So I think we'll see more and more of that in the future.
It's awesome. You also created a mindfulness-based strength program. What inspired you to create that, and can you explain that to us?
Sure, yeah. So I've been a big fan and practitioner and student of mindfulness since, for maybe 15 years or so. In St. Louis, where I last lived, I was studying mindfulness and was leading mindfulness as a therapy program for people with all sorts of different kind of challenges and difficulties, and then I also led mindfulness groups for people in the general public, like at community college classes and so on, and got a chance to kind of really look at all the nuances and the ways that mindfulness applies and can be worked with and how it can be used to help people. And then I began to do retreats on this. So all this, I kind of began to learn a lot about mindfulness this way, and my own personal practice kind of connected with that. And then I came to Cincinnati and got all of this kind of knowledge and work and practice with the character strengths. And I thought, well, this is such a perfect fit, bringing mindfulness, which means to take control of our attention and put it somewhere. So putting my attention here in the present moment, or here, or on this glass of water, and really pay attention to the coolness on my fingers, and to pay attention to the colors and the texture and the sound. And so I'm really there in the moment, or I'm there with a person's smile or with their eye contact and so on. So that mindfulness work, then connecting with these best qualities, these character strengths, and where people can become more mindful of their best qualities, or they can become mindful of other people's qualities. So it seemed like a natural marriage, and so that's kind of what I've done, and others at VIA have done, is we've kind of connected mindfulness and character strengths that way into a program that you mentioned called Mindfulness-Based Strengths Practice, which is an 8-week program designed to use mindfulness as a lens for looking at strengths, So how can we use our strengths more mindfully and to find balance with not bringing forth our zest too much, or bringing forth too much curiosity, or too little kindness in this situation, or too little wisdom. So how can we use mindfulness to find that balance? And then also, in turn, how can we use character strengths to help us to become more mindful? Because people that try to set up any kind of meditation practice or relaxation practice, mindfulness practice, many times people give up because they think it's too hard, or their mind wanders too much, it's too much of a struggle. But what they often don't do is, well, how can my deeper internal qualities, my character strengths, these natural qualities that are already energizing me, how can I use that to overcome that obstacle of mind wandering, overcome that obstacle of feeling like I'm too busy to practice or whatever? So that's kind of what that program is about, training people on integrating both of those. And then now it's beginning to be looked at in terms of, okay, now how would that be adapted to the school setting? How would it be adapted for parents? How would it be adapted for the business setting, for people in healthcare, for counselors, and so on?
Great. Is there anything else you'd like to share today?
No, I just want to really thank you for the interview, and really the opportunity to really talk about some of these things I'm really passionate about with the VIA character strengths and mindfulness and movies. You hit on a lot of the key areas, so thank you for that. And I would just also say, people are, if anybody listening is interested in emailing me, I'd be happy to give my email address out. It's ryan@viacharacter.org. So if you're interested in kind of learning more about those topics, please let me know. And if you're interested in taking the VIA Character Strength Survey, or studying the science of character, or learning about practices and ways to work with character strengths, then go to the VIA website, www.viacharacter.org.
Thank you so much for sharing with us today.
You're very welcome. Yeah, it's a pleasure, Jason. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for watching today's interview with Dr. Ryan Niemiec. To see more exclusive content, go to jasonsconnection.org.